Good morning. I'm Pastor Jake. Glad you're here this morning. I'm missing all of you. This morning, I just want to give a brief word on Psalm 46, verse 10. Then the psalm reads like this: Be still and know that I am God. I will be exalted among the nations. I will be exalted in the earth. And so just some background of this psalm. We're only taking the 10th verse of the 46th psalm, and the background of this is that Israel is in a state of emergency. The nations are raging, kingdoms are tottering. Assyria is invading. Jerusalem was surrounded, and they were outnumbered. There was great panic taking place in Israel, and it just kind of reminded me of our situation here in America. I mean, we're not being attacked on our ground here, but my goodness, it almost feels like a civil war is brewing. The anger and the hatred and the anxiety and the division and everything that's going on, it can produce a lot of things. And so I just figured, why don't we just take a moment this morning and look at what should be the Christian response to all this? Because we see how our neighbors are responding, and I think the Christian response should be different. Uh, excuse me. So if we look at Psalm 46, it gives us our answer. How should the Christian respond? Psalm 46 starts like this: God is our refuge and our strength. And then it ends like this: the Lord of hosts is with us. And sandwiched in between the first verse and the final verse is the confession that though there is great turmoil outside, inside we can be at peace because God is sovereign, right? And so the first command that we see in the 10th verse of Psalm 46 is be still. Be still and know that I am God. So many, I think a lot of us are very familiar with this passage, this verse, and there's two ways really of taking it. I'll give you the more popular way first, and then I'll give you the way I think it really was actually intended to be given. The first is the God giving the command, talking to his people, his believer. And he's saying, listen, you've got all this fear and this fret and this anxiety and even this anger, which usually comes from fear. This feeling of being out of control. I want you to be still. I want you to put all of that down. Put all of that down. Lay that down. Relinquish your control. See, the reality is that none of us are actually ever in control. We weren't created to be in control, and so we lose it when we're not in control, and we desperately try to clamor for control. And in that desperate clamoring for control brings about fear and anxiety and anger and all of these things. And God's going, oh, be still. Be still. I didn't create you for that. Stop fearing, stop fretting, stop getting angry, stop trying to be in control, and realize that somebody much better than yourself is in control, and know that I am God, that I am God, the God that is in control. And he's also talking, and I think this is more true, a better understanding of this, because it's the psalmist writing all the way up through the first 9 verses, and then God gives this command to be still and know that I am God. I really believe that he's talking primarily to the raging nations. He's talking to those who are raising up against godly people, and certainly in this case, Israel, God's people. And so God's command is for them to be still, or in other words, enough, right? Cease, lay down your weapons, stop your rebellion. It reminds me of the scene in the Gospels when they're out to sea and the storms are tossing to and fro, and Jesus is sleeping and the disciples are fretting, they're worried, they're anxious, and they wake him up and he says, don't you know who I am? Right? They got to be still and know that God is with them. God's in control. And then what does God do? He goes and he commands the sea to stop, to be still. And in that moment, it is still. And he's saying the same thing to these rising nations. Listen, recognize who I am. Be still and recognize who I am. Psalm 46:10 is the voice of the king who ends wars by his word and will exalt among the nations, whether they bow to him willingly or are brought low. God does not ask the nations to be still. He's commanding it. He's commanding it. Remember, he is the God in the other Psalm. Uh, he is the God that has the rod and the staff. Your rod and your staff comfort me. Both of those things comfort me. The fact that he is gentle and calling me into rest in him, but also he is just and holy and judge. And so both of those things we see here in this passage about God. The same voice that calms anxious heart also crushes the proud enemy. And then he tells him this, and know that I am God, right? Be still and know that I am God. To the anxious and the worried and the angry, this is a word of comfort. Again, it's a word of comfort. Know that the one who rules the nations also governs your life. The same God who commands the earth is in your presence. He's in your presence in whatever that is, in your fear and your loss and your uncertainty, whatever it is. You are not held together by circumstances, but by a sovereign God who does not fail. And knowing is not about an abstract theology, right? It's not just about knowing about God, but rather it's a relational knowing God. It's like knowing your parents or knowing your husband or wife or knowing your children or your best friend that you grew up with, knowing them. To be still and to remember the relationship that he has with me and that I have with him. And of course, there's only one way to know God, and that is through his son, Jesus Christ. And so for those of us who read this psalm, knowing Jesus Christ is certainly an invitation or a command to rest in the finished work of Christ. Um, but it's the same call for those who are raging against God, right? This again is not a command for the nations to intellectually know God. He is saying, be still, put down your weapons, cease your fighting, and know who I am, right? Recognize who stands above you, acknowledge my authority, bow down to my rule, right? So it's be still, know that I am God. And then he tells them, I will be exalted among the nations. I will be exalted in the earth. Kings and queens, and we think that we own land. We don't own anything. God created all of it. He owns all of it. And one day every knee will bow and every tongue will confess. The question is not if, but rather how we will come to that, right? And for us who are in Christ, we will come to that willingly and joyfully. And this is a warning to those who are butting against that one day their knee will be made to bow before him. So this command is to be still is both a comfort and a warning, right? And this is much like the gospel. It is the gospel that ends all true war, which all war stems from, right? It's good and evil, darkness and light, all of the uprising that we see around us, right? We should, as Christians, not see it so much as a left versus right, or a political thing, but rather a good and evil, a darkness and a light. And that isn't to say that one side is completely evil and the other side is completely light. It's more complex and nuanced than that. And what we see is if our only hope is this world, then there is reason to fret and worry and panic, but ours isn't, Christian. Be still. Know that he is God and that our home is with him. Our home is yet to come, and that he has ended all wars and at the cross. Uh, this war ceased peace and prevailed at the cross, right? Even when human wickedness seemed like it was at its peak, when it was going to totally rule, I don't think there's any time in history when that was apparent or seemingly the case as much as when man crucified God on a cross. I mean, that is the peak of human wickedness. That we not only rejected God, but we put him to death. And yet we know how that panned out, that even in that, God was not defeated yet, but he was victorious and finished that victory right there on the cross. And so as we Christians navigate through these crazy times, as we see the news, as we read the headlines, as we are confronted and interacting with others, let us not be too quick to react, but take a moment to be still and to know that the one who is in complete control, and that we know the one who is in complete control, and to remember that our job is to proclaim the good news. That is what we're here to do. That's what you were saved for. Why did Jesus Christ save you? To proclaim the good news, to spread the word. The church age is the age of peace. We bring peace not by hating or putting down or trying to, but by proclaiming the love of God through the cross and Jesus Christ to all nations, to all people, to both the left and the right. But to do that, realizing this, that just like this command, be still and know that I am God, as that comfort some and as a warning to others, even as I spread the gospel, as you spread the gospel, that is going to be a comfort to some and it's going to be a warning to others. But all of it, every bit of it, every time I proclaim the gospel, every time I put my faith in God and not what's going on down here, I bring glory to our Father. I hope that's a blessing to you this morning. Enjoy the rest of your time singing. I'll see you next week. Thanks.